Thank you so much for joining us. I'm Alex Stanley Stretch. I'm the marketing manager at Hoffman Nursery. And with me today, we have our CEO, David Hoffman. We have our director of sales, Gordon Rowe. And we have Jessica Hall and Michelle Wilson, who are our account managers. And we'll all be presenting today at some point in the webinar. So I just wanted to introduce those folks. Also, Hunter Gant, who is our other account manager, will be monitoring the chat today. And any questions that anyone has. So if you do have questions, please enter them into the chat. And Hunter will be taking care of those. We'll address them halfway through the presentation and then also at the end of the presentation as well, as time allows to do so. Again, if you don't mind muting yourself for this presentation so the presenters can be heard loud and clear. And also this webinar is being recorded today. So for those who couldn't join us but wanted to see it, they will receive a recording afterwards, as well as anyone who's joining us now, so that you guys will have it as well. So I will send that out after the webinar. And with that, I am going to turn it over to David to get started.
Thanks for the intro, Alex, and thanks everybody for being here today. We are here to talk about Miscanthus and alternatives to Miscanthus and sort of how the different plants out there and what's available is changing. So with that, we'll go to the next slide, Alex. So for those of you who don't know us, we are Hoffman Nursery. We've been growing grasses, sedges, and rushes, and more recently, more native perennials and some seeds since 1986, serving horticultural professionals, including designers, growers, contractors across North America from here in North Carolina. As a family-owned business, we've always aimed to help our customers create landscapes that are both resilient and beautiful. And today, that same commitment to quality, innovation, education, and environmental responsibility continues to guide how we evolve our offerings and respond to the industry needs. So for decades, Miscanthus, especially Miscanthus sinensis and its cultivars, have been a go-to grass for the landscape, for structure, movement, late season interest. Many of us, including us here at Hoffman Nursery, have used it and sold it for years. At the same time, we're seeing the trends. There's more documented escape into natural areas. More states are adding Miscanthus to invasive lists and regulated lists. And there's more clients that are prioritizing native and non-invasive options. Today, we want to share why Hoffman Nursery is moving towards alternatives, how these regulations are changing, and how we can make sure that we're making smart and forward-looking substitutions without panic and without shame for past plantings. So before we talk about moving away from Miscanthus, it's important to acknowledge why it became so popular. What type of big gestures that it provided to the landscapes, more upright architecture, the beautiful flower plumes that it offers, and then also long seasonal interest as well throughout even the winter season. There's a huge variety of cultivars as well, and it's historically been perceived as a tough, low maintenance grass that's easy to specify and easy to sell. So if Miscanthus is in your projects and plant lists, you're in good company. The point today is to look for other alternatives and evolve from where we are today. So over the last 15 to 20 years, we've seen a different side of Miscanthus. A lot of the discussions about the invasiveness and the potential risks associated with planting it. Field observations and research now have documented naturalized populations in at least 25 states, and the District of Columbia, for just Miscanthus sinensis alone, with more states adding it to an invasive or a watch list. Extension articles from places like NC State and out of North Carolina and across the Southeast note that Miscanthus is beginning to spread along, or it has spread along roadsides and disturbed sites, and is displacing these native vegetation and contributing to fuel loads for wildfires. At the same time, our industry and your clients are increasingly becoming more focused on native biodiversity, habitat value, and reducing invasive risk. So with that, Miscanthus is no longer seen as a neutral choice. It's a plant with ecological and regulatory baggage. So for us here, our direction has been steadily moving towards more nature-based solutions, as I'm sure you've seen, using the grasses, sedges, and now perennials that have actively supported ecological function and long-term resilience. Miscanthus doesn't fit that direction as well as it used to anymore. We're serving customers across the US and into Canada, including states where Miscanthus is already regulated or soon to be banned. If we keep promoting it heavily, we're potentially setting you up for headaches, unsellable inventory, client pushback, or conflicts with local policies. So we're choosing to gradually de-emphasize and eventually phase out Miscanthus, while expanding native and non-invasive alternatives that give you similar design impact with less regulatory and ecological risk. After the phase out, Miscanthus can still be produced for customers through custom grow orders when placed 2 years in advance. So I'll turn it over now to Gordon to talk about specifics.
So where Miscanthus is already prohibited for sale, in the next 3 slides, I'm going to cover states who've listed Miscanthus as prohibited or emerging as prohibited and or invasive. And afterwards, there's a slide that's a quick reference cheat sheet of the 3. Let's begin with states where Miscanthus is already off the table from a sales perspective. Minnesota has listed creeping silvergrass or amber silvergrass, Miscanthus saccharophloris, as a restricted noxious weed. The Minnesota Department of Agriculture prohibited its propagation and sale statewide. Not a type of Miscanthus we grow, but felt it was important to mention that also Massachusetts also has amber silvergrass on its prohibited plant list, which means it cannot be sold, imported, or propagated in the state. And the plant list, the prohibited plant list specifically says in parentheses, also covers Miscanthus giganteus, a hybrid of Saccharophloris and sinensis. This is interesting to note because giganteus, the elephant on the list, is largely thought of as sterile. Beyond outright bans, multiple states classify Miscanthus sinensis as invasive or high risk. And we want you to always check with your current regulations in your state because this presentation is not legal advice. States with emerging restrictions on Miscanthus. A second group of states is moving towards restrictions that don't completely ban Miscanthus, but significantly limit its sale. Connecticut recently passed an updated invasive plant legislation this year, and Miscanthus in essence will be fully prohibited for sale after a 3-year phase out, ending October 1st, 2028. The status of Chinese silvergrass in Massachusetts is currently under review as well. We've reached out to the Massachusetts Commissioner of Agriculture's office, and they expect to have an answer in January on what's going on with Miscanthus sinensis. New York classifies it as a regulated invasive species. Sales are restricted, and there's only a short list of cultivars like My Fair Maiden, and Scout that may be sold under specific conditions. Missouri has adopted a cease the sale initiative, which has now been tied to a new state law. Japanese plume grass, Miscanthus sinensis, appear on the cease the sale list. And implementation of this begins this year with a phase out extending into 2027 through 2029. Virginia is requiring retailers to post invasive species signage for Miscanthus sinensis beginning January 1st, 2027. Delaware and New Jersey have a phase out pending governor's signatures and approvals in both of those states. These emerging regulatory changes reflect a clear trend. Miscanthus is no longer being treated as a universally safe ornamental anymore, and the regulatory landscape continues to tighten. So from ornamental to invasive in the data. Beyond the regulations, the states with invasive or regulated status, Miscanthus sinensis is widely reported as invasive, particularly in eastern and mid-Atlantic regions of the U.S. While an exact, universally accepted single list across all state agencies is difficult to maintain or even dig up, the plant is a significant concern in the following states and jurisdictions mentioned in the search results. Georgia has it listed as important, Indiana and Kentucky as a severe threat, Maryland, Massachusetts, New Hampshire, New York, regulated for sale, North Carolina, Ohio, Pennsylvania, South Carolina, a significant threat, Tennessee, a significant threat, Virginia, DC, Connecticut, Florida, Alabama, and Illinois. The early detection and distribution mapping system, as well as state invasive plant councils and university extensions, show Miscanthus sinensis populations naturalized, escaping in roadside establishments and spreading beyond cultivation in the landscape in more than 25 states. Alabama, Arkansas, Connecticut, Delaware, District of Columbia, Georgia, Illinois, Indiana, Kentucky, Louisiana, Maryland, Mississippi, Missouri, North Carolina, New Jersey, Ohio, Oklahoma, Pennsylvania, South Carolina, Tennessee, Virginia, West Virginia, plus others depending on what reporting you look at. Research is also showing that Miscanthus seeds can remain viable for multiple years, making long-term management difficult. For us at Hoffman Nursery, the takeaway is clear. Miscanthus is increasingly recognized for its invasive potential, and offering proactive alternatives will help position our customers ahead of regulatory and ecological trends. The next slide is our quick reference cheat sheet summarizing the last 3 slides. And if you're here, you'll get a copy of this anyway. But if those of you who want to take a picture can do so. And back to David.
Thanks. So with that, where do we go from here? What does the transition plan look like, and how to adapt with that information? So with our response, how are we responding? What is the, excuse me, we're not pulling out of every Miscanthus overnight. We know that many of you have long-term designs and existing plantings. Instead, we're planning a gradual phase out of Miscanthus. This is aligned with regulations and with project timelines. After the phase out, Miscanthus can still be produced, again, as I mentioned, through custom grow orders for up to 2 years. That is all subject to if North Carolina doesn't pass a ban as well. So with that, we're shifting our focus with marketing and new introductions, and just where our focus is toward native and non-invasive grasses and sedges that deliver the same structure and beauty with stronger ecological benefits. We'll be upfront in the catalog and availability lists about where Miscanthus is being de-emphasized and which alternatives we recommend instead. Most importantly, we are here to help. If you have questions, issues, please reach out to the team. More than happy to be a resource for you. So what does this not mean? We want to be clear about that as well. We're not saying that every Miscanthus in the landscape is a crisis that needs to be ripped out tomorrow. In many cases, existing plantings can be managed thoughtfully, for example, preventing seeding, monitoring for escape and removing those escapees, and prioritizing sensitive sites for replacement. Some cultivars marked as sterile may pose lower risk in certain regions, And we understand that you may still be working through installed projects and contractual specs. Our aim is to redirect the trajectory of future work when you reach for Miscanthus out of habit. And we want to help you see the native and non-native, or excuse me, non-invasive options that achieve the same design goals while while aligning with where policy, ecology, and client expectations are heading. As an opportunity and why this shift protects your practice, as a grower, contractor, or designer, this is fundamentally about risk management and reputation. If you continue to build projects around species that are being banned or phased out, you risk future conflicts with client policies, HOAs, or local ordinances. Many institutions and commercial clients now have explicit sustainability targets that discourage or prohibit invasive plants. And removing and replacing invasive species can be expensive and politically fraught. Choosing better fit plants now helps you avoid these future costs. By transitioning away from Miscanthus and towards native and non-invasive alternatives, you can confidently say we're designing for where regulations and ecosystems are going, not where they were 15 years ago. So to recap some takeaways, Miscanthus has been an important design workhorse, but it's now clearly associated with invasive risk and expanding regulation. As we mentioned, states like Massachusetts, Minnesota, Missouri, and Connecticut are at different stages of outright bans or phase outs, while states like New York and Virginia are tightening rules around its sale and labeling. Hoffman Nursery is choosing to lead with nature by phasing out Miscanthus and investing heavily in alternatives that offer equal or better performance in modern ecological designs. In the second half of this webinar, we'll look at specific replacement strategies from native warm season grasses to structural sedges and show you how to swap Miscanthus out of your palettes without losing the design intent. Thanks.
Awesome. Thank you so much, David. I'm going to turn it over to Hunter to see if we have any questions right now. And we'll take about 5 minutes to answer any questions, and then we'll get back into the second part of the webinar.
Thanks, Alex. We don't have a ton of questions yet, so if you have questions, feel free to put them in the chat, and I'm monitoring that throughout the webinar, so I can pull those out for when we take breaks. There is one question, Kathy, you asked, so you will continue to sell the genus rather than subbing immediately. That is correct. We are still selling Miscanthus. This is all a very gradual phase out. So right now we're still selling Miscanthus. We're just encouraging the alternatives to put y'all in a better position as all of this legislation moves forward. And then once our phase out is finished, then we can still custom grow the plant as long as no legislation is passed in North Carolina that prevents us from doing so. So if you still need it for projects that are coming up, obviously we're here to tell you about the alternatives, but we still have some on our availability. Let's see. David, to give people a few minutes to ask questions if they have them, I know some people are curious where the sterile varieties fit into this.
Thanks, Hunter. There's been a lot of work with sterile varieties, both at NC State and North Carolina with Tom Rainey's work, and also out of the UGA. I believe there's 4 varieties that are commercially available at this time. This is, to be honest, we're sort of trying to see where these fit into our future plans. At this time, we do not. I think the only one that we're producing right now is bandwidth, but don't have much as far as in the production works from these other varieties. So I think, depending on how the legislation goes, I think we're going to see, legislation and forecasting. I think a lot of folks are going to naturally trend away from Miscanthus, and the numbers of what we would sell today versus what we would look at for the future in some of these landscapes is going to be drastically different. So trying to figure out how that looks for the future is a little bit, sort of looking into a crystal ball at this time. So I don't know that we have a really good answer at this point, but there are some good options out there, depending on how this plays out. But we're starting. I mean, to one of your comments earlier, we are still producing Miscanthus. We are seeing the trends, as Gordon mentioned, though, that it is changing, and this is changing quite quickly. So, whether folks are selling or growers are producing that plant and selling into those states, or they're selling within their state, and as regulations are changing there, it is happening quite quickly.
Thanks, David. We have had a couple more questions pop in. David or Gordon, you might be able to answer this about which species of Miscanthus are being banned. Is it, I know we talked about Miscanthus sinensis, and that's typically what we grow. And I know we talked about the Sacchiflorus earlier, but is this going to be like a wide genus ban in these states that are looking at this, or is it going to be specific to species that we know of?
It's specifically sinensis and its cultivars. And as David talked about, there are going to be some exceptions for sterile varieties, but based on what we've heard from reporting from state legislatures and people we've talked to, there are going to be different requirements depending on the state on whether that's allowed or not. My information says that like New Jersey currently has it ready for the governor, but they're battling back and forth about a specific list of sterile varieties. David was telling me Delaware is talking about a 3-year program at an accredited university to come up with concrete data whether they're going to allow those varieties into that state. So case by case, going back to the slides, make sure you do your due diligence and talk to your county extension agents and whomever at your state to find out what's really going on.
Thanks. Yeah, I think at this point, we're going to keep moving on. But if we haven't gotten to your question yet, just hold tight. We can touch on some at the end. And if you have more questions throughout the second half, put them in the chat, and we'll be definitely going over those at the end.
Right. All right. With that, I'm going to move on to the second part of the webinar here. Before we dig deep into the plants that we are looking at as alternatives for Miscanthus, kind of want to go over the strategy that we put together for this, and it was really kind of design-based, a design-based strategy, not by genus, but more by function and visual interest in the landscape. And then we'll talk a little bit afterwards about replacements for specific cultivars as well. But the way we have organized this, we'll first look at more compact substitutes that kind of echo the small stature of the more dwarf Miscanthus. We'll also take a look at tall architectural options that replace kind of the vertical screens and the plume drama that some of these larger Miscanthus have. We'll also take a look at replacing the giant Miscanthus, which Gordon touched on a little bit about that plant, and Jessica will talk a little bit more about that as well. But and it's hard to replace since it's such a large plant, but looking at kind of layered combinations to kind of help as close as possible to match that mass presence that cultivar has. We'll also take a look at the more color-focused or color-forward alternatives, the ones that kind of bring the reds, the golds, and the multi-seasonal interests as well. And then lastly, we'll take a look at the variegated and more textural replacements that really kind of draw your eye into the landscape and often provide the more focal interest. So with that, I will turn it over to Jessica to start looking through some of these options.
Thank you, Alex. All right, so we'll start with the compact and dwarf Miscanthus types. These are cultivars such as Adagio, Bandwidth, Little Kitten, and Little Zebra. These have typically been used at the front of the border for structure, fine texture, dramatic variegation, and a compact, tidy form that doubles as a green mulch. Some strong alternatives. Panicum virgatum shenandoah. It offers burgundy fall color and an upright habit with the stature of Adagio. The overall height and structure feel familiar if you've relied on dwarf Miscanthus in the past. Shenandoah is a native, drought-tolerant, warm-season grass that also supports pollinators and songbirds, gaining ecological function while keeping the design intent. Panicum Cape Breeze has a shorter, floriferous, very tidy habit, which makes it a smart substitute for dwarf Miscanthus cultivars wherever you want a compact, refined look. Cape Breeze handles variable moisture, is salt tolerant, and shines in mass plantings, creating low-growing, clean, and repeated forms. Carex cherokeensis is a surprising substitution. It's a versatile sedge that brings a mounded, fine-textured look that you'd expect from smaller Miscanthus, but it's happy in part shade and is more tolerant to wetter soils where Miscanthus struggles. It opens up opportunities in shade and green infrastructure applications, such as bioswales, rain gardens, and other stormwater sites. Drooping seed heads persist through the growing season, adding interest to mixed plantings as well as a food supply for aquatic birds. And lastly on this list, we've added Carex eversheen, ice fountains, which is a Musking umensis cultivar, and feather falls. Their variegated foliage parallels the striping you get from cultivars like Little Zebra and Bandwidth. These shade-tolerant selections provide year-round color, great versatility in containers and small spaces, and a richer ecological impact than many Miscanthusans. Next on our list are the tall architectural Miscanthus cultivars, such as Gracilis graziella, Huron sunrise, variegatus, and zabrinus. These plants serve as your big screens and the grasses that give you that dramatic plume effect late in the season. So some key alternatives are Panicum Northwind. The height and tight upright shape are close to many tall Miscanthus selections. Northwind has a strong vertical presence, topping out at 6 feet. Its steely blue foliage shifts to a warm golden yellow in fall and has excellent durability in a wide range of conditions, preventing erosion and adding great ecological value to the landscape. Another is Panicum Thundercloud. It delivers a tall, airy floral effect that feels very similar to Gracilis without the same concerns about seed spread. The movement and translucency of the seed heads offer that misty plume in the light quality that designers love. And our third Cloud9 on the list, our third Panicum on the list is Cloud9. It reaches Miscanthus scale height in the 7 to 8 foot range, making it a top candidate when you're replacing large screening Miscanthus. Cloud9 has strong winter structure and resists flopping, so the vertical growth habit stays in the landscape even after frost, providing cover and nesting material for wildlife. Sporobolus wrightii has wispy, upright plumes that echo the airy feel of Miscanthus flowers at a similar height to cultivars like Graziella and Huron sunrise. It's adaptable, drought-tolerant, and performs beautifully in large-scale landscapes and western or prairie-inspired gardens. And lastly, Andropogon gerardii and its cultivars, such as Red October, Blackhawks, and Carl's Cousin. Their stature and vertical form can easily step into roles previously filled by tall Miscanthus. Large, unique flowers top incredible fall color in reds and purples, strong stems, and excellent wildlife support as a native warm season grass. Miscanthus giganteus really deserves its own category. It's massive, often reaching 10 to 12 feet tall, and is frequently used as a living wall, a windbreak, or dramatic focal mass. An important note is that Miscanthus giganteus is widely regarded as a sterile or extremely low fertility hybrid. So because of that, some states may evaluate it differently from Miscanthus sinensis in the future regulations. However, sterility does not guarantee exemption everywhere, and guidance continues to evolve, so it's important to stay aware of state-by-state updates. There isn't a one-to-one native substitute that hits 12 feet and towers exactly the same way. So instead, we shift to a strategy based on layered combinations. Panicum Cloud 9, typically 7 to 8 feet, so it doesn't quite reach giganteus height, but it brings a similar sense of screening and architectural weight with its large late-season flowers and golden yellow fall color. Andropogon gerardii, especially Carl's cousin, usually reaches 7 to 8 feet tall with strong later season color and stiff stems that work beautifully for screens, backdrops, and tall drifts. Big blue stems are host to several skipper butterflies and provide nesting material and shelter for birds and small mammals. Sporobolus radii, around 6 to 7 feet, with a fountain-like, airy growth habit that captures some of the drama of large miscanthus in both size and showy flower set. Giant Sacaton is extremely versatile in both wet or dry areas, as well as being salt and alkaline soil tolerant. So some of the tips that we can give you on messaging that you can use with your clients and even your own teams is that there's no perfect 12-foot native replacement. But using these 3 native selections together in layered mass plantings recreates the same impressive scale as giant miscanthus while improving ecological performance. So that framing gives you permission to move away from Miscanthus giganteus without feeling like you're losing its impact. You're just rebuilding it in a more resilient, nature-forward way. And with that, I will hand this over to my fellow account manager, Michelle. Thank you so much for your time and attention. It's great to see so many friends and customers on this today. Michelle?
Yay. Jessica covered Miscanthus alternatives based on height and function. And next, I'll review color, variegation, and seasonal interest substitutes. I'll discuss alternatives for Miscanthus purpurescens and morning light based on foliage color, variegation, and seasonal impact. So designers often choose Miscanthus purpurescens to highlight the deep red, orange, and golden tones in the fall landscape. On the other hand, variegated color may drive plant selection. So Miscanthus morning light is known for delicate green and white variegation. To start, let's review a couple sub options for Miscanthus purpurescens. Panicum virgatum ruby ribbons is my first option. I suggest ruby ribbons as a native alternative that showcases bold red, burgundy fall color, upright habit, and height similar to purpurescens. Ruby ribbons adds a multi-season color shift and pairs nicely with blooming perennials in the landscape like fall asters. And I suggest repeat the plantings with a similar fall color for a cohesive design. Sporobolus heterolepis is another alternative for purpurescens. I recommend this plant for the golden orange copper fall tones that echo the seasonal color transitions seen in some of the Miscanthus cultivars. Sporobolus is another native option for the landscape. It may be shorter, but it still provides striking seasonal interest comparable to purpurescens that can tie into your landscape design. Sporobolus heterolepis mass plantings will add seasonal impact and graceful movement in the landscape and implement them as a lawn alternative or on a slope for erosion control. So now I'm going to review a couple subs for Miscanthus morning light. First, I'm going to talk about just Champsia cespitosa. I recommend this plant because it showcases green foliage topped by airy white and green plumes, comparable to the variegation you find in morning light. And Dischampsia cespitosa adds a delicate color to the landscape and pops in shade gardens. It's a native alternative for small scale spaces reaching only about 1.5 feet with blooms. Carrick's Feather Falls is my last suggestion. Feather Falls has arching, variegated green foliage with white margins, similar to Miscanthus Morning Light. Feather Falls adds seasonal interest with evergreen foliage throughout the winter. The compact scale allows this plant to be implemented in small spaces, container plantings, hanging baskets, or retaining walls. So we will move on to the next section. I'm going to highlight two alternatives for Miscanthus variegatus, zabrinus, little zebra, and strictus. And these will, we'll talk about some texture and banding and striping qualities. So designers will often choose these forms based for focal points, the banding and the striping, like I mentioned, which is pretty unique to that plant. And these cultivars draw the eye with pattern, contrast, and strong vertical lines. So I want to give about 4 alternative options for this unique group of Miscanthus. First, we'll start off talking about Calamagrostis. There's a few cultivars. First one's a very popular, one of our best sellers, Carl Forster, which is a very nice upright plant, strong vertical lines similar to Strictus. Then we have Avalanche cultivar, Overdam, or Jeju Do, which offer variegated forms comparable to the banded or striped Miscanthus. And similar to Miscanthus, these Calamagrostis varieties are reliable performers in the many climates. They function as focal backdrops and add notable texture to the landscape. Muhlenbergia capillaris are often designed into impactful mass plantings. Both the species and white cloud cultivar become a focal point that will steal the show in the fall landscape. The soft glowing plumes of Muhlenbergia capillaris echo the luminous quality of the variegated Miscanthus brings when it's backlit. And Muhlenbergia capillaris adds memorable late season display and may be semi-evergreen in warmer climates. Boutelouis zigzag offers fine texture and like playful horizontal seed heads. And zigzag is an effective substitute for the compact pattern Miscanthus cultivars. Zigzag is a low growing alternative. Those seed heads will lead the eye. And when implemented as a focal point or a mass planting, they add an architectural element that functions in contemporary designs. And lastly, I'm going to cover Ceslaria autumnalis. It's another low growing alternative, but it is still upright. It's fine textured and compact, which aligns to the smaller variegated Miscanthus forms. Ceslaria autumnalis functions as a focal point in the landscape with bright chartreuse new growth, year-round texture, and strong performance in both sun and partial shade. And I'll throw it back to Alex.
All right. Thank you guys so much. That was great information about some alternatives. And keep a lookout. We'll be adding some new plants next year that can also serve as some alternatives. So just keep checking back about that. And as they mentioned, these are some great options. But there's more out there as well. So our sales team again is a great resource for that information. But in addition to the more design approach alternatives that we just gave you, we also put together a Miscanthus alternatives chart that kind of gives a detailed look at 3 substitutes for each cultivar that we grow, and it's based on size, habit, and color and design function. So That information is available in a PDF. You can see a screenshot of it here, but you can also scan this QR code to get it, get a copy of it, and we'll also send it out after the presentation as well. So that will be another great resource for you guys to have. In addition to that, more resources. Again, we just want to be here to kind of help you guys with this transition as it happens. So we will have this webinar and those category-based design alternatives available for you guys. As I mentioned, we'll send this presentation out to you guys. It will also be available on YouTube, probably in about a week, so that you will also have it available on there. I mentioned the Miscanthus alternatives chart as well. That is a PDF that will be a great resource. And then, of course, our sales team and our senior management are also great resources for you guys to, if you have questions about what Hoffman Nursery is doing, or any questions about specific alternatives, we are here to help in any way that you need us. Also just like to mention a few of our other resources that we have available for you guys. Our website is a great resource. We have lots of plant profiles, photos, blog posts, resources on there for you guys. And of course, all of this information will be put on our website as well. We also have our catalog that we put out yearly for you guys. It will be coming out earlier this coming year. It'll actually be coming out in April. And we will be including a lot of this Miscanthus alternative information in our upcoming catalog. You can pick up a copy if you're at any of the trade shows. And we also have a digital version available on our website. And you can also scan this QR code to get the digital version. Another great resource, obviously, is our availability. If you're looking for numbers or what's in stock, what's coming up, another great resource is obviously our availability that is updated daily for you guys. We also have a social media presence as well. So we'll put a lot of this content on there. We're updating stuff on there a couple times a week. So if you don't follow us, please join us on Facebook, Instagram, Pinterest, LinkedIn, and YouTube. And as I mentioned, this presentation itself will also be uploaded to YouTube. And you can find us at Hoffman Nursery on those different platforms. And so with that, I'm going to, again, turn it back over to David to kind of wrap us up today. Again, if you have any questions, please put them into the chat, and Hunter will take care of those, and we'll get to those as soon as we wrap up the presentation. So I'm going to turn it back over to David.
Thanks, everybody. Great job. So to close out, I just want to bring everybody back to the big picture. As we mentioned, Miscanthus has been the important workhorse in the landscape world for decades. Many of us have specified it, planted it, and relied on it, but the ecological and regulatory environment is evolving rapidly, and our plant choices need to change with it. Our goal here is not to shame past decisions or force abrupt change, but it's to help the industry move forward thoughtfully with better fit species that support ecosystem health, reduce risk, and stay ahead of upcoming regulations. The good news is that we have a rich, resilient palette of natives and non-invasive grasses and sedges that deliver the same structure, color, and drama that designers count on without the ecological baggage that Miscanthus carries. We're committed to helping make this transition smoothly, confidently, and creatively. We'll also be expanding our list of recommended alternatives this coming spring. So that's some new plants. So be sure to keep an eye out for that as well. I think at this point, I just want to say thanks everybody for coming. I'm going to turn it back over to Alex and Hunter for wrap up and any other questions.
very quickly, like I mentioned, we'll send this out to you guys, but we do have resources on here as well. So you guys will have that information of what we used kind of today to gather a lot of this information, especially the information from the states. And all of that state information is based on December 2025. Just want to make sure you guys know that. So, Hunter, do you have some questions for us?
Yes. Yeah, we have had a few questions come in, and if you have some more, feel free to put them in the chat now. And y'all are also throwing out some really great alternatives that we didn't even include in the slideshow. So I wanted to point out a few that y'all have mentioned. Schizocarium chameleon, that one has great variegation for some of those variegated miscanthus. It's just a bit smaller. Y'all mentioned Schizocarium haha tonka. We love that one. And then some of y'all also mentioned sorghastrum. So we have Indian steel and then the straight species sorghastrum newshands. And we love all those plants. All of those would also be great alternatives for miscanthus. So thank you guys for throwing those out there. I'm going to go back to a question we got earlier from Mark. He asked, will you still keep miscanthus in your catalog for states that don't have restrictions or where it's not considered invasive? And I think we touched on this a little bit in the first half, but we are still growing miscanthus at the moment because this is still a gradual phase out. This is also barring that North Carolina doesn't pass legislation that prohibits us from growing it. But once our phase out is finished and we no longer have miscanthus on our availability, we can still custom grow it for our customers that are wanting it in states where it's not labeled as an invasive. So I hope that answers that question. Yeah. And then we had a question about panicums that self-seed and how that may play a role. And Jessica put a little comment in here about that as well. But panicums are a native to North America. So the self-seeding of the North American natives is a bit different than what we would see with miscanthus because it's not native to the US or Canada. So Jessica wrote here that we don't really worry about the natives reseeding because the birds and the small mammals in the ecosystem will eat the seeds. But then if you did notice something getting a little bit more out of control than you would like, you can always just pull up seedlings as they pop up. I don't know if Jessica and Michelle have more to add on to that. But we had another question about, I think going back to when you were talking about the giant miscanthus, Jessica, Catherine said that she had seen Andropogon Red October not standing up as well or keeping its erect form in the fall, and wants to know about Black Hawks or Carl's cousin. Like, based on your experience, which do you think would keep more of that upright form that
I
we
think
see
that's
from
a
the
great
giant
question.
miscanthus?
Yeah, the andropogons in general typically are late to reemerge in the spring and are usually the first genus to go down. But Carl's cousin is named for Carl Forster because I remember Dave McKenzie saw it like driving 60 miles an hour down the road, and it was so upright and vertical late into the season. That's why he chose that. So Carl's cousin is super upright. But yeah, just keep in mind that you are going to have a little bit of a shorter window than some of the other grasses using the Girardii. But I think it's worth it for both the ecological value and the beauty of the color, just everything about it. I love that plant. Good question. Thanks.
Yeah. Let's see. I think a lot of these were covered. Jessica, do you have thoughts on Millennia Sky Racer as a sub or an alternative?
I think, yeah, Sky Racer is one that we talked about. It doesn't perform beautifully here in the South, but if you are up north in the Northeast or possibly the Great Lakes area, I think you'd have much better luck with it. That's where we sell most of our Millennias. So I would definitely use those. It's not a native plant, but it's a beautiful grass.
So thank you. I don't see any other questions popping up. I do just want to say a reminder that if you have stayed the whole time and you're a landscape contractor and you are wanting to receive credits through the NCLCLB, you can email Michelle with your name and your license number and the answer to these 3 questions that I've put in the chat. I'll put it in one more time, but that way that'll help y'all. That'll let you guys get credit for staying throughout the webinar. And there were a few questions about landscape architects and a certificate of attendance or something along those lines. Alex may have more information on that. But yeah, I think that covers all the questions that I have seen in the chat.
Okay. We did not get it filed for the landscape architect, but we could certainly look into you guys submitting it to receive credit for it. So we'll look into that. Just email us about that as well, and we'll see what we can possibly do there. And if you have any other questions that come up or you think of after this presentation, again, just reach out to us. We're happy to help you guys. So I will go ahead and wrap up. Again, thank you guys so much. Look forward to sending this out to you guys in the next couple of days, and then putting it up on YouTube next week. So again, thank you guys so much, and we'll talk soon and hope to see you at the trade shows in January. Thanks, guys.
Thank you all.
Thank
Thanks
you.
again. It was a good
Thanks, guys.
presentation.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you as
Thanks.
well.
Bye.
Bye. Have a good day.
Thank you all for attending.